A while ago, we made a video about the ghost towns of Yorkshire, the abandoned villages and empty settlements scattered across England's largest county. It struck a nerve. So we went back into the records, and what we found was staggering. Yorkshire isn't just home to a few abandoned villages. It's home to thousands of them, entire communities that thrived for centuries and then vanished, cleared by greedy landlords, drowned beneath reservoirs, swallowed whole by the North Sea, or simply emptied out and forgotten. These are 11 more Yorkshire ghost towns you've never heard of. Brand new. No repeats. And number one was once a town bigger and richer than Hull, until the sea rose up one night and erased it from the map forever. This is Dust and Stories. Subscribe, because the ground beneath Yorkshire is full of the dead and the deserted. Number 11. Wharram Percy, North Yorkshire. We have to start here because it's the most famous deserted village in all of Britain, and yet most people outside Yorkshire have never heard of it. Wharram Percy sits in a remote valley in the Yorkshire Wolds. It was continuously occupied for around 600 years, founded in the 9th or 10th century, and thriving between the 12th and 14th centuries under the noble Percy family. At its peak, it had 2 manor houses, around 40 peasant homes, and a fine stone church. And then it died. The cause was a transition that played out across England. The switch from arable farming to sheep. Sheep were more profitable than people. In around 1500, the landlord, Baron Whorlton, evicted the last 4 families and cleared the land for grazing. There is a grim local legend that the very last inhabitant, a man who refused to leave, died when his dilapidated, abandoned house finally collapsed on top of him as he slept. Today, the ruined church of St. Martin still stands in the valley, surrounded by the grassed-over foundations of the houses. It has been studied by archaeologists for over 60 years, making it the best understood medieval village in Europe. And it stands as a monument to a brutal truth, that an entire community can be erased simply because sheep paid better than families. Number 10. West End, North Yorkshire. In the valley of the River Washburn, the village of West End thrived for centuries on the flax and textile industry. It had mills, homes, a chapel, and a working community. Then the industry declined, and in 1966 something final happened. The valley was deliberately flooded to create the Thrushcross Reservoir. The village was abandoned, the people moved out, and the water rose over the rooftops. West End was drowned. But it didn't disappear entirely. In times of severe drought, when the water level in the reservoir drops low enough, the ruins of West End rise back out of the water. The foundations, the old mill, the bridge, the walls, emerging from the depths, like a less Greek Atlantis. People come to walk among the bones of the drowned village in the dry summers, stepping over thresholds that families once crossed every day, knowing that the water will return and swallow it again. There is something uniquely unsettling about a drowned village. A village cleared for sheep at least leaves its ruins in the open air. A drowned village is held hostage by the water, visible only when the reservoir chooses to give it back, then hidden again beneath the surface for years at a time. West End is still down there now, waiting for the next drought. Number 9. Whorlton, North Yorkshire. Near Stokesley, in the shadow of the Cleveland Hills, lies the deserted village of Whorlton. This was no ordinary village. It was a fortified settlement with its own castle. The 14th century gatehouse of Whorlton Castle still stands, along with the 12th century earthworks and the ruins of the village's 12th century church, Holy Cross. Whorlton was struck hard by the Black Death in the 14th century, which devastated its population, and it never fully recovered. The combination of plague and economic decline emptied the village over the following centuries. Today, the castle gatehouse stares out over empty fields, and the ruined church sits among the graves of people whose village died around them. You can stand in the gatehouse and look out over what was once a thriving community and see nothing but grass. Number 8. Argham, East Riding. On the Yorkshire Wolds, the village of Argham has vanished so completely that almost nothing remains above ground. Once a recorded medieval settlement with its own population and fields, Argham declined and was deserted, leaving behind only earthworks, the faint humps and bumps in the soil that mark where houses once stood. From the ground, you might walk straight through it and notice nothing but uneven grass. From the air, though, the pattern reveals itself. The rectangular outlines of vanished homes, the sunken lines of old streets, the boundaries of long-abandoned plots. Argham is one of hundreds of these lost villages of the Wolds, a landscape so dense with deserted medieval settlements that archaeologists consider it one of the richest areas for studying village desertion in all of England. The name survives on maps. The people are long gone, and the only trace they left is a pattern in the grass, visible from the air, spelling out the ghost of a village that time forgot. Number 7. Cottam, East Riding. Another of the lost villages of the Wolds, Cottam followed the same grim trajectory as so many of its neighbors. A thriving medieval farming community, it was gradually depopulated as landlords converted arable land to more profitable sheep pasture, evicting the tenant farmers who had worked the fields for generations. By the post-medieval period, Cottam had been reduced from a village to a scattering of isolated farms, and finally to almost nothing. The deserted site, marked by earthworks and the faint outlines of old streets and houses, sits quietly in the Wolds, another community sacrificed to the economics of wool. It's worth pausing on what these clearances actually meant. Each one of these vanished villages represents real families, generations of people who had farmed the same strips of land, worshipped in the same small church, and buried their dead in the same ground, being told to leave so that sheep could graze where their homes had stood. There was no compensation. There was no appeal. The landlord owned the land, and the law was on his side. The Yorkshire Wolds are, in a sense, one vast graveyard of villages, and Cottam is one of the headstones. Number 6. Esca, East Riding. Near Beverley, the medieval village of Esca once stood as a nucleated settlement, houses clustered together in the traditional village pattern. Research has matched the physical remains of Esca to the documentary record, showing exactly how the village contracted over time. The nucleated village gradually broke apart, reduced to a handful of substantial farms, and was finally deserted altogether. A map from the 18th century shows the settlement had been completely depopulated by then. Esca is significant because it's one of the clearest examples historians have of the slow death of an English village. Not a dramatic single event, but a gradual draining away of life over centuries, until the last farm closed its doors and the fields fell silent. If you're finding this haunting, hit subscribe right now. The last 5 are the ones the sea took. Number 5, Colden Parva, East Riding. You won't find any ruins of Colden Parva. You won't find earthworks. You won't find foundations in a field, because Colden Parva is under the sea. It was one of the many settlements along the Holderness coast, the fastest eroding coastline in Europe, that has been completely consumed by the North Sea over the centuries. The soft, boulder clay cliffs of Holderness retreat by up to 2 meters every year, and as they crumble, they take everything with them. Villages that appear in the Domesday Book of 1086 have simply ceased to exist, their land now lying somewhere beneath the gray waves offshore. Colden Parva is one of around 30 such villages lost to the sea along this single stretch of Yorkshire coast, a slow-motion catastrophe that has been swallowing the county's edge for 1,000 years. Number 4, Hartburn, East Riding, another victim of the hungry Holderness coast. Hartburn was once a living settlement on the eastern edge of Yorkshire, with people, homes, and farmland. The North Sea took it. As the cliffs retreated year after year, the village edged closer and closer to the brink. until finally the land it stood on simply fell into the water and was gone. The story of Whorlton is the story of the entire Holderness coast, a place where the map of England is being redrawn by the sea, where you can stand on a cliff top and know that the ground beneath your feet and the ground where villages once stood will one day be part of the seabed. The people of Holderness have always lived with this knowledge that the sea is patient and the sea always wins. Number 3. Sunthorpe, East Riding. Sunthorpe is another of the drowned and eroded settlements of Holderness. A name in the old records, a community that once existed, now claimed entirely by the North Sea. The Bossa Thorpe ending of its name is a clue to its origins. It's Old Norse, marking Sunthorpe as a settlement founded or named during the Viking Age, when Scandinavian settlers spread across the Yorkshire coast. For 1,000 years or more, Sunthorpe held on at the edge of the land, and then, like its neighbors, it slipped beneath the waves. The Viking settlers who named it could never have imagined that the very sea their ancestors had crossed to get there would one day rise up and erase the place they'd built. Number 2. Auburn, East Riding. The village of Auburn once stood near Fraithorpe on the Holderness coast. By the 19th century, coastal erosion had reduced it to almost nothing, and today it is effectively gone. Another community devoured by the relentless North Sea. Auburn has a strange literary echo. The poet Oliver Goldsmith wrote a famous poem called The Deserted Village, set in a fictional village he called Auburn. Sweet Auburn, loveliest village of the plain, lamenting the destruction of rural communities. Whether or not the Yorkshire Auburn inspired it, the coincidence is haunting. A real deserted village, bearing the same name as the most famous fictional deserted village in English poetry, both of them monuments to the same loss, the erasure of the communities of ordinary people. Number 1. Ravenspurn Odd, East Riding. And finally, the greatest lost town in Yorkshire's history, a town that was once bigger, richer, and more important than Hull. A town that has vanished so completely that we can't even be certain exactly where it stood. Ravenspurn Odd was founded in the mid-13th century on a sandbank near Spurn Point at the mouth of the Humber estuary. Its name came from the Vikings, from Hrafin's ear, the raven's tongue of land, and it grew with astonishing speed into one of the most important ports in the north of England. It had over 100 houses. It had its own court, its own prison, its own warehouses, its own mayor. It sent representatives to Parliament. It collected dues from hundreds of ships every year. It was, for a time, more significant than Hull itself. A boom town of the medieval North Sea, built on trade and ambition. But Ravenspurn Odd was built on sand, literally. And the sea that had created the sandbank could just as easily take it away. Through the late 13th and early 14th centuries, the sea began to encroach. Storms battered the town. The land flooded. Buildings were undermined. Bodies were said to wash out of the town's graveyard as the sea ate into the land. And then, in 1362, a catastrophic storm known as the Grote Mandrenka, the Great Drowning of Men, struck the coasts of the North Sea, killing tens of thousands of people across England, the Low Countries, and beyond. Ravenspurn Odd was destroyed. The sea swept over it and washed it away entirely. A town that had rivaled Hull, that had sent men to Parliament, that had been one of the great ports of the medieval North, simply ceased to exist. Today its ruins lie somewhere beneath the waters off Spurn Point, unseen for over 650 years. Divers and archaeologists have searched for it. Occasionally fragments are found, but the town itself, the streets, the houses, the harbor, the mayor's court, is gone, swallowed whole by the sea, the single most complete erasure of a major English town in recorded history. Yorkshire is the largest county in England, and it is also one vast burial ground of communities. Villages cleared for sheep, villages drowned for reservoirs, villages emptied by plague, and villages Entire towns devoured by the North Sea. The Holderness coast alone has lost around 30 settlements to the water. The Wolds are carpeted with the earthwork ghosts of medieval villages. And somewhere off Spurn Point, beneath the cold grey water, lie the ruins of Ravenspurn Odd, a town that was once greater than Hull, waiting in the dark for a tide that will never bring it back. If this video showed you a Yorkshire you never knew existed, subscribe to Dust and Stories. We find the places the world forgot, the ghost towns, the drowned villages, and the communities the sea erased. Like the video, drop a comment telling us which lost town haunted you the most. And thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one.